Good morning everybody, welcome back to VegPlot. Going to be doing lots of different jobs today, slightly different video. It's going to be a top 20 job. Actually, stop filming, stop recording. Sorry, that probably woke you up, didn't it? I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, basically I've got to number 10 I think in the video, and I realised that 20 is far too many. Probably just drive you mad. Anyway, so yeah, it's only going to do 10 things, but at the end of the video there'll be details about a free list I'm giving away. I'm going to create a PDF download if you want to, which you can download for all these 20 things, stick it on your fridge or shed or whatever you want to do, just to remind you of things to do over the winter. So yeah, free download on my website, that is vegplot.uk. Anyway, right, back to number 10. See you there. Right, so the first thing on our list of jobs to do, if you're lucky enough to have a greenhouse, polytunnel, cloche or whatever it is which you grow plants in, the first thing to do is to get rid of all the old plants in there which are rotting and dying off. Now, that might be tomatoes or chili plants, things like that, things which are finished and well and truly over. Get them out, get them composted or thrown away so that you clear your growing space ready for the next stages and for next spring. Next thing to do, once you've cleaned everything out, is to give it a clean. Now, I know it's not something we want to be doing this time of year. We don't want to be getting out in the cold, but if you get a bucket of soapy water, a very soft broom or brush, or a cloth or something, and get out there and clean the outsides of your greenhouse or polytunnel. And I'll show you why. If you look up here, you can see all this green algae growing on the outside of the polythene, and that happens on the glass as well of your greenhouse and so on. It's quite important to get rid of that because it will slowly but surely, it'll creep on, it'll grow, and it'll eventually create this sort of barrier to light. It won't affect all the light obviously, but you'll be amazed how much more light comes in when you've cleaned it all off. So give your polytunnel, greenhouse, cloches, etc. a good clean soapy water so they're ready for the spring and to get growing next year. Right, let's get on to point number 2. So for point 2, if you are like us and you like growing plants in pots and you have them on your patio and so on and so forth, you might want to make sure that they're not standing in water over winter, and I'll show you here. So we've got a selection of sort of trees, there's the acers and oaks and little bonsais I'm playing around with, and this sort of curry plant. And basically, as you can see, they're in these trays of water. And what happens is these will remain waterlogged throughout the winter, and the roots could rot and cause the plant to die. So what you want to do is get these pots and take them out of their tray and get rid of the water. And then check for any bugs and things like that and sort of creepy crawlies that you don't want, and especially if they're tender plants this is, and go through, remove any slugs and snails and things. And if it's a sort of a tender plant, I've got plenty of slugs here, then I can take this down to the polytunnel and keep it in the polytunnel over winter, and that will help ensure that this stays nice and healthy to spring when I can bring it out again after all the frosts have gone. Now, it's quite a tough plant, a little curry plant, but I like to treat them gently and put them in the polytunnel. Right, that's got most of those done. I'll finish the others off in a minute. Let's get on to point number 3. So, Number three is now you've cleaned everything out, cleaned the place down, bring in all your tender sort of plants and things that you want to protect. Now, this is a very odd bonsai tree, but the pot is broken, so I don't want the frost to get to those roots, so I'm bringing that in. And as I said, the curry plant is pretty tough, but I like to keep them, look after them in the polytunnel, and then I can give them a prune down in spring, and hopefully they'll shoot out nice and bushy and so on. Not that this one isn't bushy, it's doing quite well actually. But yeah, put these in your growing space to help protect them over winter. And I've got a few others I'll show you as well. So I'll just put this up here for the moment. Now, things you want to bring in over winter are obviously delicate plants, but also small potted plants. I mean, I've got this theory, and I think it's probably as much true, that if you've got plants that are in small pots and you have really hard winters and so on, then basically what it is the pots can completely freeze solid, and obviously the water in them expands and it can damage the roots and potentially kill the plant. So most of these sort of pot sizes are okay, but if you've got smaller ones, it's worth bringing them in somewhere. Perhaps like these two grapes that I've got here. Yeah, they're in quite narrow pots and you're potting up, but yeah, bring them in. So other things to think about: if you've got orange and lemon trees, they're growing quite nicely, but I did leave them outside, and we had that snow a couple of weeks ago, and as you can see, if I show you up the top here, the leaves here took a bit of a scorching, and the new growth and so on. So it's well worth bringing any orange and lemon trees indoors over winter, just to protect them from the frost and the harsh winds and so on and so forth. Right, okay, let's get on with point number 4. So for point number 4, it's all to do with watering systems if you've got greenhouse polytunnel with a watering system set up, or even outdoors on the back of your house. So for instance here, I've got my water butt full of water, and I've got my drip line feeder here, which basically shouldn't remain out over winter. So you want to make sure you turn off your water feed, undo the attachment at the bottom. I've already sort of pre-prepared this one, and disconnect it. So then you want to empty your water out if you had any water in it, and make sure you turn it off and take the batteries out over winter and store this indoors. So this really will go for anything like if you've got water pumps, or I would say on the back of your house sometimes you can have these sort of hose line timers. Those sort of things probably should all come in over winter if you get hard frost and things, because obviously if they freeze up they can damage. As regards the drip lines, I don't take mine out. I figure if there's any water in there, and it can get really cold in here. If we see, we had that recent cold snap and it actually got down to, you can see that sort of -3 in here. But basically I don't worry about the drip lines. If there's nothing on the end, then the water can expand and it'll push itself out the end without hopefully splitting or damaging the drip lines. So that was number 4. Look after all your water irrigation items. Right, let's get on with number 5. So for number 5, which is a bit of a treat actually, we've got rid of a lot of the chores, is if you're in the market for getting some new plants, now is a really good time, especially for sort of fruit trees, fruit bushes, I think bare root roses, basically anything that comes as a bare root plant. If you go online and you buy them now, you're going to get them cheaper than, say, potted plants. They'll be shipped to you and they can go straight in the ground. And yeah, you'll have some great plants for next year. And this is one which I received as a bare root plant, was it a year or so ago? It's a gooseberry bush. It's a Hinamaki red. And it just turned up as basically a little twig. It's about this sort of long. There's a twig with sort of just roots, no soil, and I basically potted it up and it's growing fine, and this is going to go up the new allotment next year. So if you've got spare cash, and Christmas is coming, who hasn't, let's get up to the allotment with any bare root plants and get them in the ground, because now is the perfect time when the plants are sort of dormant, and also you can pick them up a lot cheaper than, say, in the spring. Oh, and another thing as well, in the spring there's always a lot of demand for plants, and so if you order them now, basically what it is you're getting the choice pick of the crop, as it were. Basically there's not this huge rush and things haven't sold out, so now is a really good time to buy bare root plants. Right, let's get on with number 6. Right, this is a bit you don't see very often. And we all have these little areas, don't we, either in our gardens or behind our polytunnels. And that is taking stock of everything you've got, tidying up and giving it a clean. Now, as you can see, I've got lots and lots of pots along here, and it's a very sheltered here behind the polytunnel, so I don't worry too much. But if you've got lots of pots, there's a chance they can blow around all over the place, especially on the allotment. We find that on the allotment, you know, pots scattered around the edge and they all need picking up in the spring. But what with the winter storms and the winds, it's worthwhile getting your pots and putting them somewhere safe. And so what I quite often do is, I'm going to wash these in a minute, but what I quite often do is I'll store them in old sacks. So I just trim the tops of compost sacks, this is a manure sack, and I'll put all my pots into these, fold them over, and that helps keeps them secure, protected from the elements stuff over winter. But cleaning, now as I say, I don't do this very often, but I know that some people do recommend it, and that is to take your pots and wash them in soapy water to get off all the old soil and so on and so forth from the previous year, and that helps reduce bacteria build-up and things like that. So I'm going to get on and wash a few of these now, and I'll do the rest over the next week or two. And tidy this whole area up, and I promise to come back and show it to you when it's all done. Another video that'll be. Right, I'm working my way through these. I've only got about another 500 to do, so I won't bore you with all of that, but at least no one can say that I never do the washing up. Right, okay, right, let's get on with the next item in the list, and yeah, I'll come back and finish these later on, because obviously you don't want to see me washing all these pots up. Now, number 7, right, tool maintenance. Now, obviously we've all been using lots of secateurs and shears and loppers and trowels, etc. throughout the summer and autumn, and doing all our lovely gardening. But this time of year, if you just chuck them in a shed, by the time you get them out in spring, they're going to be all covered in resin and rusty and really not looking their best. So it's a really good time now to get your shears and your loppers and all the other secateurs and so on, and give them a good scrub down, perhaps some sandpaper, clean the sap off the blades and any rust that you've got on there. I mean, if you've got time, obviously take them apart and so on, but what I'm doing for this, just to show you, is because I haven't got time to take them all apart for this video, is I've just given them a bit of a scrub back with some sandpaper and a stiff brush, and then I've got some oil, so a little 3-in-1 oil, and I'm just going to oil, I don't know if you can see this, just oil the blades and so on. Rub that in and do that on both sides. And if I just do that over the winter now, I know that come the spring, these secateurs will be good for me to use, you know, and they won't have all seized up and become a rusty mess. Right, I've got another cloth here somewhere. So I'll just wipe the excess oil off. You don't necessarily have to, but I've got to use these in another part of this video. So yeah, take a look at all your tools, give them a good scrub down, a de-rust and an oil, and they'll look well and work perfectly come the spring. Right, let's go and get number 8. It's outside in one of the flower beds. Right, for job number 8, if you haven't already, and I hope you have, especially if it's really cold where you are, yeah, dahlia tubers. As you can see, I've pruned all mine off to about 4-5 inches from the ground. And now I want to lift these so that they don't all rot in the ground. I've mentioned it lots of times before in other videos that yeah, if you leave them in the ground and it's very cold, you get really hard frosts, the tubers will rot and die, and also if it's really damp they will rot and die. So it's a really good thing to try and lift them. I wasn't going to this year, but I thought no, I really must. So I'm going to get a fork, we'll lift one up, clean it up, and I'll show you how I store it. Right, I've got myself a bucket of water and a fork, so I'm just going to put in, not too close to the tubes in case I spear them. It's a bit like potatoes really, but yeah, get underneath them and lift them out by the stems that you've left. And this isn't a very big one, but you can see, well, I think I've actually broken part of one of the tubers, but yeah, so that's what you come out the ground with, a load of tubers and some stems. Now, a good thing to do is to put your labels for what they are around the stems so you know what they are for next year, but sadly they've all sort of disappeared. I ended up with mainly Dahlia My Love, which are white ones this year. So anyway, I'm going to wash this off in this bucket and show you what it looks like. So the good thing is, yeah, get yourself a bucket of water or a tub or something like that, and get in between the tubers while the soil is still damp out of the ground, and remove, Good to have gloves on, I find. Remove as much of the soil as you can between the tubers. And you'll see then you end up with sort of a load of tubers with these little roots on the end. And this what I do then is put this in the polytunnel like this, upside down, so the water all drips out the remaining stems. They dry off, and then in about 2 or 3 weeks' time I'll turn them up the other way and then put them somewhere sort of not warm, but not that's going to get frozen and so on, or would be damp. And then they'll last throughout the winter, and I can divide them or replant them next year in the spring. Right, let's get on with the next one. Right, number 9. Well, before we get to that, here's the tuber. I'm just going to put it here on the staging upside down, let it dry out in here. It's about 24 degrees in here now, so let that dry out before we get a really cold snap. Make sure that I put it somewhere frost proof. Okay, so number 9, seeds, the thing we all love, don't we? Yeah, I have quite a few, and I find this is the way it's worked best for me. It's basically just one of these little tough boxes. Take the lid off. I've just made some little cardboard dividers, written the letters on them. So then I break the seeds up alphabetically, and this really helps me when I want to put things into the record book for next spring, for sowing next thing. Anyway, so yeah, the seeds that you can sow now, there aren't many, but there are some that are quite hardy. And so if you haven't already, you could be starting some broad beans, which I shall be doing. Start some broad beans, probably I'll start them indoors on a sunny windowsill, and then as soon as they've germinated, I'll bring them in here, and then they can overwinter in here, and that'll give me a nice early start in the spring with them. Also, if you're into flowers and things like sweet peas, you can be sowing them as well. You can sow some sweet peas indoors, get them germinated, and then put them out again in a sheltered area like polytunnel greenhouse, and they're really tough, and they'll grow very slowly, but then it'll give you a nice early start in the spring. There are 1 or 2 other things you can sow now, but let's go on to number 10. I think we'll pop up to the allotment for that one. Right, actually, before we get to the allotment, number 10 is all about harvesting the crops that you've got at the moment, especially vegetables mainly, I imagine, in the UK. Anyway, here you can see I've got some celeriac, which amazingly have done really well. All I did was put them into these tubs. This is the 2nd year growing. I put them in the tubs. They've got water trays underneath, which basically means there's lots of water at the bottom, so there's quite damp here a lot of the time. It's in the shade. I just had these 5 tubs together, and they've done really well, much better than expected. Anyway, so yeah, on point number 10, let's harvest some of our crops. I've got some celeriac here, as I say, but up the allotment I've also got some parsnip and maybe potatoes, so I'll head up there in a second. All I did with these was planted them out at the beginning of the year. I don't know if I've got a label here somewhere. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. These are Celeriac Neon F1, and they were sown on the 25th of the 3rd. So, yep. So, yeah, I did, I think, put chicken manure pellets and things in here, I think. But not much else. They just seem to have done okay this year, which is really nice. They do get afternoon sun, which comes in, but this fence that's east that way. And so, yeah, quite pleased with this. Quite a nice looking celeriac, so that'll be good for tea. I've got all these others, about 23 others, which we shall harvest later on. But anyway, let's get up to the allotment and go and get some parsnips. Yeah, I've just lifted 1 parsnip. I think I've got a few more in here. Well, I know there are lots more in here, but they're not quite as big as I'd hoped. But I think same problem last year. I didn't thin them. That's my fault. Anyway, let's just lift a few more and see what we've got. That one's not too bad. They say we've had our first frost, and they say they get sweeter after the first frost. I'm not sure about that, but they do last in the soil quite well. So I've got 3 there, if you can see them. Yep, so put them in the bag and take them back. Right, so that's those three. Let's go and see if I've got any potatoes still in the ground. Fingers crossed. So I'm just going to have a dig around and see what we can find. Oh, here we go. I seem to have struck gold straight away. Yeah, here we are. Now I can't quite remember what these are. I think they're probably, and I know it sounds shocking, but I think they're probably first earlies or second earlies, something like that. Anyway, they've been left in the ground for a while and they seem to be okay. So let's lift a few of these. Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Look at that one. Right, well that was worth it. A few here and a load more in the buckets just from this little area here. So I'll head back to the polytunnel. I'll give them a wash up, show you what we've got. Right, let's give all this stuff a wash off, shall we? See what we've got. Right, that's all that lot washed, but at the end of the season I cut back these bulb fennel and just to see, you know, what happened. They'd sort of more or less finished. We've got some nice little small bulb fennel, so they should be good roasted. They are tiny and I don't know how much longer they will last, so I'm going to take a few now while they're young and tender. There we go. Yeah, 3 tiny bulb fennel, but I shall roast these with got celeriac and potatoes. So yeah, let's just have a look at this harvest, shall we? Really pleased with these potatoes. Got some really nice ones here. Not blemished really, not much scab or anything like that. So they've come out really nice and still got plenty more to come. Stab that one. A few small parsnips, so yeah, should have thinned those. An amazing celeriac, really pleased with those, and some small bulb fennel, so really pleased with that lot. Right, so nice little harvest there. Hope you've enjoyed that video. Let me know if you have, because then I'll do the other 10 things perhaps in the next one or coming up sometime over winter. And don't forget, if you head over to veggieplot.uk, you can download the free 20 things to do over winter PDF, which you can print out at home. Okay, till next week. See you soon. Bye for now.